Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Tuesday to all. Hopefully you're staying warm out there. I'm in Florida and we're freezing down here now. So if y'all up north could take your weather back, that would be extremely appreciated. Hey, if you don't know, I see a lot of new faces on here. I am Kevin Clark. I'm known in the industry as the ERISA nerd. I'm also the CEO, the co-founder of Plant Confidence, which we've created the first operating system for financial firms to scale. You know, the research, the ERISA compliance, advice creation, and all that good stuff for held away accounts. And today, we're going to be talking about stuff that I'm very passionate about, and that is the ever-changing ERISA rules and how they apply to advisors when you're working, with the held away 401k accounts, and then the ongoing saga between one of the world's largest custodians of 401k assets and the new fintech company that was giving advisors the tools, to trade those held away accounts. But before we begin, like any webinar, disclosures usually, no tax, no legal advice, blah, 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 blah. One housekeeping note at this point in time too, at any point in time, feel free to use that questions box to ask any question or leave a comment. So I'm only going to talk for about 20 minutes, have about 10 minutes for questions, hopefully intelligent answers. And then we'll get you out of here in a half hour or so. So at any point in time, just feel free, add that question, and we'll take a look at it at the very end here. So let's jump right into it. If you don't know, ERISA was enacted in 1974, specifically designed to protect workers from employers and advisors mismanaging pension plans. It was specifically enacted after the bankruptcy of the car company Studebaker, which literally lost all the pension money and left their employees with nothing left for the retirement. So the government actually wrote the law to be overly harsh to any employer or advisor who did not follow, the checklist of what's actually required from employers and advisors when they're working with private company pension assets. And to make matters worse, it was never written for advisors who are working with 401k participants. The first 401k didn't even come into an existence until 1981, 7 years after ERISA was written. It wasn't even an afterthought. So many of the rules really don't make any sense in today's environment. Now, because of this, every single president since George W. Bush has been trying to modernize ERISA as private company pension plans. They're literally minuscule compared to the $14 trillion that are currently being managed by 144 million Americans with money currently in their defined contribution plans, which also means there's 144 million Americans who could potentially, benefit from your advice. The market's absolutely huge. But the rules you're operating under, they're proscriptively harsh on purpose, and they don't even make sense in today's 401k environment. So just like every president since George W., the Biden administration tried to update the ERISA rules to make sense in today's world that was supposed to go into effect in September of 2024. Now, specifically, the administration was trying to update ERISA 321A2 of the law. You're not an ERISA nerd like me. That's the section of the law that actually talks about providing non-discretionary investment advice for a fee by an advisor. You tell your clients what to do, they implement it themselves. Now, 321A1 was never touched with the rule, which means if you're trading your 401k accounts with discretion, you're automatically an ERISA fiduciary, and you got to follow the DOL, rules, which are very, check the box. You either did what they required you to do or you didn't. And if you miss any of the boxes and a lawyer finds out, your clients have direct access to federal courts, and they can also change it to a class action lawsuit. And if you lose any of that, you have to pay back with personal assets. There is no corporate protection. So this is why the largest financial firms in the country will not work with held away accounts right now, which leaves a tremendous opportunity for you, the independent advisor. I'm getting back to providing non-discretionary advice. The Biden administration wanted to streamline the current 5-part test that's in existence to a 3-part test. long story short, and actually this is how long the story is. This is what ERISA looks like when you print it out and put it in binders. The top two binders are the current law. The bottom two binders are what the Biden administration was trying to change. Now, what they really wanted to do was make every single conversation with a 401k participant one that is covered under ERISA, not one that you need to check all 5 boxes to figure out. Specifically, they wanted to make sure that any rollover recommendations were held to ERISA fiduciary standards. Now, for the most part, this would not have changed how you are currently doing business, because you already need to complete a detailed form for all of your rollovers, either under ERISA by using PTE 2020-02 or under Reg BI, under the SEC Reg BI rules. So not much would have changed for you under the retirement security rule under the Biden administration. But the Biden changes, they would have forced everyone basically to use PTE 2020-02. So no longer the Reg BI SEC rules. And you're already familiar with that. And ironically, PTE 2020-02 was actually created by the Trump administration. And then there was also PTE 8424, which they were changing, but only insurance brokers, not insurance agents, but insurance brokers would have been allowed to use PTE 8424, which does not require a financial firm to have policies and procedures, complete an annual review, have a C-level person certify it, everything that's required under PTE 2020-02, that you're already complying with. But the biggest industry that would have actually been affected by making any rollover recommendations under the Biden rules, and they sued because of this, was the insurance industry. For the very first time, insurance agents and brokers were going to be subject to ERISA fiduciary standards when moving any money from a 401k into a fixed annuity or an equity-based annuity. For the first time, the insurance industry's recommendations would have been subject to federal courts and class action lawsuits and all that good stuff, no differently than your recommendations were. And the lawsuits worked. 2 courts actually put a stay or a pause. The stay is the legal term for a pause on the ruling, and said, hey, look, we're not going to let this ruling go into effect on September 23rd, 2024, until we have a chance to listen to all of the claims the insurance industry is making. This means that it was never going to go into effect because the Trump administration just recently stopped defending this in court, thus killing that rule altogether. So technically, I could actually throw away the bottom 2 binders into that stack. I may have to recycle the paper and save the binders because a newish administration means another attempt to put their stamp on the ERISA rules. There's been several executive orders already, by the Trump administration regarding 401k plans, like limiting the ESG in plans, adding private equity and real estate, annuities, and asset allocation funds within plans. But so far, nothing specifically regarding a new ERISA fiduciary rule. However, one of the main reasons, for no longer defending the Biden rule is because they are coming out with their own, what they're calling investment advice fiduciary under ERISA rule. It's expected the Department of Labor is going to be releasing this new rule before May of this year. It's on their spring agenda. Now, nothing is known about what's to be expected. There's not been, any leaks or, anyone discussing this right now. So anyone saying that they know what's going to be in here is pure speculation, which includes me. But one thing I actually do believe is going to be in there, to the insurance industry's dismay, is once again making one-time rollover recommendations in ERISA Fiduciary Act. Obama did it and their changes in 2016. Trump did it in his changes in 2020. Biden did it in 2024. The one thing they all have in common is essentially all their efforts have been shut down by the courts of trying to make those one-time rollover recommendations standardize across the industry, regardless if you're using a fee-based account, if you're using an annuity, whether it's a variable or fixed annuity, the government's trying to standardize all of the rules. Now, we don't have any ideas, to what they're calling the investment advice fiduciary under ERISA is going to contain, but we do know how it will come into law. The DOL has to follow the Administrative Procedures Act, or the APA for short. And under the APA, the DOL actually needs to publish the proposed rule, the reasoning for the rule, and all the costs associated with implementing the rule in the Federal Register. And the Federal Register is the official daily journal of the US government, and it's available to the public. Now, after it's been published there, they have to hold a comment period. It's probably going to be at least 60 to 90-day comment period, or someone's going to sue them for not having a long enough comment period and try to get them back to go back to the drawing board. We've seen this with the regulations in the past. Now, after the comment period, the DOL needs to compile the comments, take them into consideration, and either adjust the rule or provide feedback on why they're not going to adjust what they have out. Then the final rule and the date the rule needs to actually be complied with all has to be published in the Federal Register again. Shortly after the final rule is published, in the last case, I think the insurance industry sued the same day without even reading what the new rule had. Someone in the industry, most likely, again, it's going to be the insurance industry, is going to sue, and the rule's most likely going to be stayed, or paused until it can be heard by the courts. So even after a new rule is created, May of 2026, possibly allegedly going into effect next year, there's almost zero chance it's going to be enacted until it goes through the Supreme Court, which literally could take years to do. So stay tuned, at least for the first publication of the rule, which should be coming out sometime soon. You can actually sign up for our blogs and our updates at erisanerd.com if you want to be, one of the first to know and then get my perspective on what we have there. But before we actually move on to the next subject, which many of you have let me know this is what you're interested in, I do want to clear something up that I keep hearing and reading on LinkedIn, and I'm getting questions about, and I see it on some of the message boards and whatnot. Just because the Biden rule has died in the courts, it doesn't mean that there is no ERISA fiduciary rule. You still need to comply with the original rule from 1975, which is that 5-part test, if you're providing any type of non-discretionary advice. So the 5-part test is, number one, do you provide advice for a fee? Are you charging your client for the advice? Is it on a regular basis? A regular basis could be quarterly, it could be every time your client comes in for a review, anytime your client calls. Is there a mutual understanding between you and your client that you're going to provide this advice? Of course, it's very specific. That understanding does not need to be in writing. Is the advice the primary relation or the primary reason that your client is making the investment decisions? And number 5, did you individualize the advice for your client? Now, you have to be able to say yes to all 5 of these to be considered an ERISA fiduciary and subject to the DOL check the box rules. So if you're, let's say, providing very specific advice, all that stuff, but you're not charging for the service, then technically you don't have to follow the ERISA fiduciary rules. You just have to follow the SEC Reg BI rules. And again, this is only for non-discretionary investment advice. There's absolutely no test if you're trading your account with discretion, because you're automatically an ERISA fiduciary and you're subject to the DOL's check the box rules, whether you actually know the rules or not. And speaking of trading with discretion, trading with discretion was actually a very small segment of advisors up until a few years ago. Pantera, if you don't know, is a fintech company that's changed dramatically over the past few years as they've been gaining popularity. If you don't know, Pantera allows a financial advisor to essentially have a dashboard to upload all the trades for held away, 401k, 403b accounts. The advisor only has access to the Pantera dashboard. They do not have access to the actual custodian's website. And the advisor does not have access to the client's username or password, so they don't have to worry about the SEC custody rule and all the extra compliance that comes with that. So for the first time, an advisor had a compliant and an easy way to actually trade their clients' held away accounts. And that is until Fidelity blocked them. Now, before we do go any further, I do need to confess something. This is my pastor Chip from Grace Community Church here in Sarasota. So I need to be honest under my pastor's picture here. I am biased as I'm discussing this with you. I am a complete believer that every 401k participant should be working with an advisor they choose. I don't think your client should have one advisor for their 401k and then you for all their other assets, unless that's what your client wants. So as I discuss this with you, I want you to know I'm biased in Pantera's favor, and I do not like what Fidelity has done. Now, with that said, Fidelity has blocked Pantera from accessing their client accounts. They forced all the Pantera participants that they could identify to call an 800 number to reset their credentials, or they were going to be locked out of online access for all of their Fidelity accounts. Now, when they called, the participants were read a script of violating the terms and conditions and the cybersecurity risk, and they were chastising the participants for sharing their username and password with Pantera. Now, many advisors that we work with, they actually use us to create trade files, for all their clients, and then they were implementing them through Pantera. So this has affected us directly as well. Now, Fidelity has framed the issue as a cybersecurity risk, and then effectively shut down Pantera from sending any more trades to their platform. So many advisors that we work, they reach out to me in frustration. I know this, firsthand. And please know it's not just Fidelity too. For the record, the states of Washington, Missouri, Nebraska, Ohio, and Colorado, 5 states, they also prohibit the state registered advisors within their states from using Pantera due to the same credential sharing concerns that was, cited by Fidelity. They almost cited them verbatim, which leads some to question. Now, Pantera didn't take this line down. The CEO actually came out swinging with published letters, and they're trying to frame the dispute differently. They don't buy the cybersecurity claims that Fidelity cites because Pantera is SOC 2 compliant, which is the highest industry standard for proving that you protect your client's data. Pantera is framing the issue one of consumer choice, and that Fidelity is trying to force 401k participants to only use Fidelity products or Fidelity's advice services. I've actually written several blogs about this on ERISAnerd.com, and I framed it as a David versus Goliath. Although, so far, Goliath is winning. Now, ironically, Fidelity used to use the same credential sharing technology they now outlaw when they were connecting accounts to e-money, which they own. I think much of this might have changed recently because Fidelity created a company called Akoya. Akoya is owned by a conglomerate of banks like JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Capital One, pretty much all of the largest banking institution out there. Akoya was created specifically to standardize APIs for financial data sharing. Why is this important? Why are you telling me this, Kevin? In 2024, the same year the Biden administration rules were supposed to go into effect, Section 1033 of the Dodd-Frank Act was actually set to go into effect too. This was known as the open banking rule. It gave consumers the ability to designate anyone they want to get their financial transactions and balance information for their accounts. The banks had to comply, and they were not allowed to charge for providing, the financial data information. You want your CPA to receive all your banking mortgage information? No problem. Your clients want you to receive all their banking information? No problem. A one-way street of financial data was now easily accessible by your computer software with permission granted by your clients. Much of that now is powered by Akoya. And as of now, this ruling actually only included banking accounts. There was nothing stating that investment accounts needed to be shared with third-party professionals like yourself. The rule was actually paused recently by the courts, and then JP Morgan just openly violated the rule by starting to charge to send out the financial data. And Plaid was the first one to cater to pay Akoya. So the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Board, the CFPB, they actually pulled back the rule right now. They said they're going to be reissuing a new rule soon. Hopefully, it's going to include investment accounts, because if it does, our industry will finally be able to, get accurate performance reporting on held away assets, which no firm has yet been perfected. But at least it will create a one-way street between your clients' held away accounts and your firm, which my belief is can then be turned into a two-way street over time. So trades will be able to go direct to the custodians. So with the battle between Fidelity and Pantera, you're probably here wondering, hey, Kev, what can I do now? First and foremost, I'm going to encourage you, and I don't normally do this, to get a little politically active. Contact your elected officials and let them know that you support the open banking rules and you want them to include investment accounts. You want a two-way street for all of your clients' financial data, not just their banking data. You want their 401k, 403b, you want their HSA accounts and 529s all being able to directly go into your software. Let them know that you support credential sharing, which is allowed under the SEC rules, and let them know that you support consumer choice for held away accounts. Now, this is the start of a long-term solution, because the CFPB, they have to follow the APA rules just like the DOL. So it's going to be a lengthy process of, proposal, comment period, et cetera. So what can you do today to trade held away accounts if the accounts are held at Fidelity? You're not going to like my answers. The first one is you can have your client's username and passwords, and you could trade the accounts directly at Fidelity. You're going to have to work out, the two-factor authentication, with your client, which is something Pantera, figured out beautifully. But this is a solution if you're SEC registered. But do realize this is going to trigger the SEC custody rule, and you're going to need a surprise audit, fill out new sections of your ADV. The audit is cumbersome to you and your clients and expensive, so it is a solution, but it might not be an ideal solution. Now, keep in mind as well, though, that this is just for SEC registered investment advisors. State registered advisors actually have to check with your own state regulator and what their rules are in regards to, custody rules, because this may not even be an option for you, because not every state parallels, what the SEC puts out in their rules. And the 5 states I mentioned earlier definitely are not going to allow you to do this. Now, the other option you may not like is you're going to have to let your clients know what's going on in the industry. Let them know that Fidelity's blocking Pantera and you can no longer trade their account. Let them know that you could provide them, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, here's the trading instructions. You're going to have to log into, your Fidelity account, and you're going to have to trade it yourself. This is what a lot of advisors that are using our software have done. They're using our software to deliver the trade instructions directly to their clients, versus us having them send the trade instructions to the advisors. They're actually having us send them to their Fidelity clients. They're teaching their clients how to trade their own accounts through Fidelity. And it's actually not hard to do. Most participants can, figure it out pretty quickly. They just let them know, hey, exactly, here's how you're going to manage your account. And then every time that they want them to make changes or rebalances, they put it through our software, push a button, and then, they deliver the advice directly to the participant. Now, the other thing that advisors we work with have been doing, especially for those clients that are a little gun shy, and they're not going to be able to implement it on their own or learn after 1 or 2 times on how to do it, is they've been doing a Zoom call, or a go-to-meeting call with their clients. And they have their clients log in, to their 401k plan, then the advisor takes over the screen controls, uses our trade files to program the Fidelity trading screen versus the program the Pantera account. Not essentially ideal in terms of trying to scale. It's more work on your end, but I will tell you, clients absolutely appreciate it. And it's a solution available now, at least. So one, you can continue to charge. If you're charging 50, 60, 100 basis points, it's still a way for you to continue to charge those fees. But at least it's a solution until the fintech world figures out how to integrate, with these financial institutions, or more likely how these financial institutions decide that it's okay for the fintech world to integrate with them. So how long this is going to take, it's actually anyone's guess right now. I'm a firm believer, it's going to happen within our lifetime. But with that, let's take a look at the questions box and see what questions that come in. Now, as I open this, and this is the one thing I don't like, how small these questions are. My contact information, Kevin at ERISA Nerd, is on there. If you do not feel comfortable asking in a group session like this, definitely reach out to me via email, but definitely get the answers. Okay, so what is a realistic time frame for all the APA procedures to be completed? So the normal time frame is going to be, they're going to put out, let's say if they put it out today, they may say we're going to start a 60-day comment period, 30 days from now. So you have 30 days to digest it, and then they start a comment period that's open for, let's say, 60 days. A quick basis, maybe 90 days after that. I think the last time they did it, I want to say it was like 45 days or something, like extremely fast, to the point where they almost got sued for how quickly they just kind of poo-pooed everybody's comments. But realistically, if they put it out now, they probably could have this wrapped up, within the first quarter of next year, and then the lawsuits will probably start to be filed almost immediately. There's more questions coming in, and they're moving my screen. Let me make this bigger. All right. Also repeat the 5 states that are going along with Fidelity. Yes, I'm biased. It was, let me go back in my notes. Back here. One more. Washington, Missouri, Nebraska, Ohio, Colorado. Now, there's other ones too that may or may not allow it. Like I know California was on the bubble where they were thinking about it, but they weren't sure. So if you're not SEC registered, I would definitely double check with your state or use ChatGPT or something like that to figure out if you should be doing it as well. What about Fidelity Broker Link? What's your experience with that, Ben? So Fidelity Broker Link is a little bit different because you can only move assets into that actually have a brokerage link. And right now, only about 38% of the plans have a brokerage window. And there's not a plan that I know of yet that allows 100% of the assets to go into a brokerage window. So what we're talking about today is kind of managing the core lineup. You definitely could manage money through a brokerage window. I do know Fidelity is not going to let you charge. You're not going to be able to fee the assets. There are several firms out there that work specifically in this space that created their own mutual funds to work within the brokerage window, so you can be compensated for those assets on there. And I know we're running out of time, so let me just take maybe 2 more questions. I swear when I practiced this, it was a lot closer. What do we need to be doing if we accept or solicit rollovers for us to manage at Schwab or Altruis on a discretionary basis? Do I still need to do a cost comparison and benefit comparison. So anytime you do a rollover from a 401k plan into any type of IRA or anything like that, it's either going to fall under the Reg BI SEC rules, or it's going to fall under the PT 2020-02 rules. Both of them require a cost and benefit comparison, almost like a T-chart. Here's the services you get here, here's the services you're going to have in the IRA, here's the fees for this, here's that, So both of them, the PT 2020-02 actually mirrored a lot of what Reg BI was doing. The biggest difference is you don't have to have the certification on the rollovers. You don't have to pull a sample. You don't have to have your firm sign off and all that kind of stuff under the Reg BI SEC rules. But either way, yeah, if you're pulling money from a 401k plan and you're putting it into an IRA and you're telling your client to do it, then 100%, yeah, you're going to need some sort of form in order to do that. Whether your clients have to sign that form or not is in dispute, but I would always say, from a best practices, always have your clients sign off on that. So at this point, clients with Fidelity 401k can't use Pantera for advisor to access their 401k. My contact at Pantera thinks that we can, but the client has been scared off from the tactics from Fidelity. So my experience is they've been locked out. That if they log back into Pantera, they're going to have the same problem. So if somebody at Pantera told you differently, maybe they have a workaround. I'm pretty sure they were trying to use some sort of authenticator app or something like that to do it. So maybe they perfected that, but at least as of what I know right now, it's still problematic. And then I'll take this last one. Are you seeing advisors still use Pantera for non-Fidelity 401ks? Yes, I am. I'm still seeing a lot of advisors use it for all of their non-Fidelity work because there hasn't been any issues, as far as I know, for any other firm actually blocking, at that point in time. So I apologize. I went 3 minutes over. There's about, I don't know, half a dozen more questions I saw in the queue. I should have shut up, 10 minutes earlier. I will email you personally to those. Everyone's going to get a recording of this as well. So if you have any questions, you can always hit reply. That'll go straight back to me anyway. But I do thank you. We're going to be doing a monthly series, on all sorts of different topics. So, stay tuned. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If there's anything I could ever help you with, please let me know. And with that, stay warm and make it an awesome Tuesday. Peace.